Hello and welcome to week 4's Dinosaw, another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week. So let's crack on. First one is the real environmental cost of crypto art. Now this is a growing area, so crypto art is any piece of art really that is scarce, and you show that it is scarce because you create a token really that represents your art. Now these are called non-fungible tokens or NFTs. So you create your token, and like a crypto token, you then put it on the blockchain, and then it can be tracked and traded and sold on the blockchain. So certain pieces of art have more going on their blockchain, some have less, just because of the piece of art, for instance. Maybe some only allow 1,000, some only allow 1, for instance. Now it turns out it suffers from the same issues you may have heard of with cryptocurrency, that there's a huge amount of electricity needed to compute the blockchain. So there needs what's called a proof of work to happen when you create stuff on the blockchain. Now this website, which is really interesting, which I'm linking to here, what it does is it takes popular pieces of crypto art that are out there, looks at their blockchain live, and therefore can then make a calculation at how much energy is really used to sale and bid for that piece of artwork, and it's more than you think. Like, it's incredible. So for instance, the piece of art you're looking at now has the same equivalent of 5.5 months of the average European's electricity usage, or flying for 9 hours to create and store. Well, actually no, it's not to create, it's to store and bid for one piece of artwork. So that's incredible. Have a look at the website, and it's a bit of a rabbit hole. If you didn't know about it, it just lifts the lid on an entire world. The Amazon Dash Smart Shelf is really fascinating, caught my eye. So this, you might remember the Dash buttons were discontinued a couple of years ago. These were buttons that you could automatically order things on Amazon just by pressing a button. Is when sort of IoT buttons were all the rage. Now this takes a much smarter angle on it, and I didn't know this existed. I think it's only in the US. It's certainly not available in the UK just now, but really fascinating. So it's a connected shelf that weighs things automatically. So if you put, for instance, your soap powder on there, your washing powder, and it goes down to maybe just a little kind of scoop at the bottom, it can detect that and it can either alert you or it can order it for you. So it's as simple as that, really. A smart shelf, one of those things you didn't think you needed, but now I do know it exists. I can think of all the great things I would use this for. Check it out. I don't know when it's coming to the UK yet. So electric car news. So this is a battery that can charge fully in 5 minutes. So this is Israeli company StoreDot, who have shown some essentially pre-production prototypes, i.e. they're ready to go and can be produced. It's not just a sort of a lab experiment. So these use sort of nanomaterials. Eventually they're looking at using silicon for their electrodes, the things that actually underpin the circuitry within the battery, essentially. Now the way this works is current batteries are strangled by those materials. So when you're trying to put electricity in, you have to cool the batteries, and basically it takes a while for the electrons to go in and the lithium ions to move around. If you can use much more flowing materials, then you can actually dump a whole load more electricity in a lot more freely, and therefore quicker as well. So that's what's going on here. Not coming to a vehicle anytime soon. It's certainly ready for a pre-production. But the problem is that there aren't any filling stations, shall we say. So you've got people like BP who are reimagining the forecourt experience. So in the future, clearly it's going to be EV. It's not going to be petrol and diesel pumps with electric chargers down the sides. It's going to be electric chargers in the middle with the odd pump here and there if you've got one of those old-fashioned petrol cars. So the problem is you need really high power charge for this to actually work, and those don't exist at the moment. So lots of infrastructure and lots of investment needs to be put into it, but there's light on the horizon for range anxiety with a 5-minute charge. Clubhouse. So I've been hearing about this for a while and never really dug into it, but finally plucked up the courage and finally got an invite as well. So this is the equivalent of a couple of years ago is like, you're on TikTok, right? You're on Clubhouse, right? So this is what they call a drop-in audio chat. It's like going to a conference really and dropping into different rooms and hearing what's going on in the rooms. people start rooms, they talk about certain things. It could be anything. It could be everything from what it's like to be a new parent to how to trade in cryptocurrency or just a DJ set. It could be absolutely anything. People are the speakers, the panelists essentially, and people can just listen as well. And if you've then got a question, you can be invited up to speak and have your voice heard. Other than that, you're on mute as a listener. But it's really fascinating. You can find out lots of people are speaking about very smart stuff that you would never normally get access to, or you'd have to go to a conference, or you'd have to search them out. For this, you can meander through it, finding really interesting rooms to wander into and learn about. It's invite only at the moment, but my best advice is download it. If anybody is in your contacts list, they might see you pop up and they might give you one of their 2 invites. So it's definitely worth a go. Absolutely fascinating. It's not without its issues. Last year there was a lot of news, which is where I heard about it, about moderation, and also the same issues exist in this digital realm as do in real world, people talking over each other, etc., etc. They seem to have got that a little bit better now. So check it out. OCD. So 1 billion people have OCD, and 40% of those don't respond to normal treatment, should we say, and they're left to find their own alternatives or suffer essentially. So there's a really interesting research that came out that uses transcranial alternating current stimulation. Now the reason I know that, and it rolls off my tongue, is I've done it for a different study. So this is a picture of me with a tax headset on, and what it really does is it just puts a low level of sort of fizzy electric current, alternating current through your skull, and it just feels like a sort of slight tingling sensation. But what it does do is it sets your head, or your brain at least, into a frequency, and those frequencies can do certain things, and also you can then target those frequencies to certain parts of the brain. The study I was in was all about, can you increase creativity by using this system? And this study uses exactly the same to study reducing the effects of OCD. What they actually did is they targeted the reward systems in the brain, and what they found is that if you target the reward systems, what it actually does is it increases exploration of the brain, and the brain sort of frees up a little bit more, which is obviously going the opposite direction from the OCD symptoms. So it was really interesting how they found that 6 months later, 5 months later, those effects were still there. So this might be a promising treatment for the extreme effects of some OCD sufferers. So there you go. Crypto steel, another one of those. I didn't know this existed. I didn't even know it was a problem, and now you do. It's quite interesting. So this came up in a talk I was listening to about cryptocurrency, and when somebody mentioned should they be on an online exchange, or should they actually cash stuff out? And we heard recently there was somebody with a huge amount of Bitcoin who couldn't remember their password. So that's where the discussion was. And what you can do is, it turns out what you shouldn't do is you shouldn't write it on a piece of paper and put it in a file, because if you have a house fire or a flood, then that's you gone. Likewise, you shouldn't really put it online, because you cannot guarantee the security of that. And likewise, if you put it in what they call a cold storage wallet, a piece of electronic device like a USB drive, you can't guarantee A, that's not going to be hacked, you're not going to remember it, or it's going to be in the same flood/fire. So how do you get into your cryptocurrency account? So what you do is you stamp it into pieces of metal, and you put those little metal things in the ground, in a safe, whatever it is. They're not going to corrode, they're not going to be affected by fire. Now the way this works is, if you do have a cold storage wallet, you put that in there as well, but this guarantees that your passwords will always be readable. So it's a world I didn't know about. You order one of these, what they're called doomsday digital wallets or reminders. You get all the little bits of password numbers, and you stack them all up, and there you have your password, which isn't going to go anywhere. A world I didn't know about, but it was fascinating. And then finally, this is a quite interesting tale, but there's a law that's taken 6 years for the US to pass, and this gives small production auto manufacturers in the US less red tape to produce their cars. They don't have to go up to the same standards as the big sort of Ford and GM, those sorts of people. DeLorean, DMC, announced that they were going to make a new version of their car, or the same version. They're going to re-release it, but it's taken 6 years. They backed the law to say, look, we need this law to be able to make our car, and obviously the electric revolution has happened. So now they've actually said they're going to take advantage of the new law and put an electric motor in their car. So there is actually a new DeLorean.com you can go to if you'd like to order one. But I thought it was really interesting because obviously in Back to the Future 2, the DeLorean is now electric powered, which is fascinating. So basically the film predicted exactly what's just happened to the DeLorean, which I thought was fascinating. So with that, we are done. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.